Hey guys, it's Sam, and welcome to Caps Lock, a podcast designed to help you live bigger, better, louder, and longer. Before we get started, I just want to thank you guys for listening and for giving this a chance and for coming here in pursuit of your best self. This is a space where we are going to grow together, and my hope is that it helps you go forward confidently, unapologetically, and with purpose. It's time to live your life in Caps Lock. If that mission feels aligned for you, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and let's dive in. Hey besties, today we are in the studio recording the next 3 episodes in a row. And I say that to you because even though it's a little inside baseball, I'm going to be wearing the same outfit for all of them because I'm not fake. I didn't bring changes of outfits. And also because I wanted to kind of give you a heads up about the way we're approaching. So today I have a very science-y episode for you, and I really think you're going to love it. And then the next 2 weeks, we have very 2026 New Year's focused episodes. And I really care so much and try so hard at the end of one year and the transition into a new year, which you guys know because I talk about it all the time. I'm into goal setting, I'm into resolutions, I'm into manifestation, and a lot of you guys are too. And the data shows me that. Our top episodes, a lot of them are like actionable advice for setting your goals, achieving your goals, rebranding, glowing up, and transforming parts of your lives that you want control over. So the next 2 episodes after this are very much in that vein of things. So today I decided to go super OG and bring you like a very sciencey episode about something that affects all of us. This episode started out, like the idea of this episode was to talk about wireless headphones, AirPods, Bluetooth, running earbud things, right? Anything that is wireless. And if you know, Paul Saladino makes videos about this all the time, saying wearing AirPods is basically like strapping a microwave to your head all day long. And I'm sure you've seen some of your favorite wellness influencers throwing out their microwaves, which kind of makes that narrative tie up in a neat little bow. If microwaves are giving us cancer through radiation and AirPods are basically tiny microwaves, our Bluetooth headphones are giving us cancer, making us sick, killing us, right? But it's not limited to just that. Once you start looking up whether our headphones are exposing us to radiation, you realize it's also our cell phones and then our laptops, our TVs, our Wi-Fi routers, our freaking light bulbs. And such is the cross to bear of any wellness girly trying to research literally anything. You cannot keep it to one topic. Everything's connected. There's always a deeper and deeper rabbit hole to fall down. So the topic of the episode has evolved, and today I am going to tell you the truth as it stands today that is researched, published, peer-reviewed by medical professionals, healthcare organizations, and nonprofit regulatory institutions across the world to answer the question, are our electronic devices, phones, computers, Wi-Fi, microwaves, Bluetooth headphones, making us sick? And the answer might surprise you, so stay with me to find out. We'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by Whoop. Whoop is the only wearable that turns your health and fitness data into personalized guidance. I've been wearing my Whoop for over 2 years now, and I can confidently say that the new model is legitimately an amazing upgrade. The new device is 7% smaller than the previous model, and the new battery lasts for 2 full weeks before you need to recharge. But those aren't even my favorite features. Between tracking for women's cycles and hormones, determining your physiological age and pace of aging, and heart health features like on-demand blood pressure and ECG readings, the new Whoop is designed to improve your longevity and could literally be a lifesaver. And now, for the first time, Whoop Advanced Labs connects over 65 key biomarkers like thyroid-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and cortisol with more than 100,000 daily health data points. When you schedule a lab test, you don't just get numbers. You get clarity on what's happening inside your specific individual body, including insights to your hormones, metabolism, and recovery, plus a clear action plan to start improving your health. You know how I feel about my health. Proactive and preventative. And the new Whoop is my #1 teammate in wellness. Join now at join.whoop.com/Samantha Fair. That's join.whoop.com/Samantha Fair. When Paul Saladino makes these videos about AirPods, he often cites articles published in the National Library of Medicine, which is actually where we get a lot of our information and where lots of respected, credentialed, smart people get their information as well. You've even heard doctors and experts and professionals come on this podcast and recommend the National Library of Medicine. The difference is he's sometimes misleading us about what the research actually says. For example, in the video I'm talking about where he compares using AirPods to strapping a microwave to our heads, he posts a screenshot of the title of a National Library of Medicine article called Human-Made Electromagnetic Fields, Ion Force Oscillation and Voltage-Gated Ion Channel Dysfunction, Oxidative Stress, and DNA Damage, parens, review. That's what it's called. In this article, you read all kinds of stuff about mutated cells as a result of EMF/EMR exposure, which is electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic radiation exposure from cell phones and other wireless communication devices. But what's misleading about this is that this article is not actually a research paper, it's a review. Published peer-reviewed research requires an actual study or trial to be done to bring new data and evidence under review with a hypothesis in mind to test and results to produce. But a review looks at existing research that's been published, and it basically looks at all the data and proposes a new hypothesis or mechanism to explain why things happened within that research and to call for more research to be done to prove the mechanism or hypothesis that the review is proposing. And I'm not saying that reviews are not legit or the people who wrote the reviews are misleading us. It's just that their hypothesis is not necessarily proven in the review. I guess an easier way to explain this and like a clearer way to explain this is the order of research. Research goes hypothesis, then research to result in evidence that either supports or does not support the hypothesis, and then conclusion based on evidence. But reviews go read the research, hypothesis. That's it. Particularly in the case of this specific review, most of the research that's reviewed in the review was conducted on individual cells in like petri dishes and labs. And the cells are not protected by like skin, bones, tissue. There's not like necessarily a significant distance between the source of radiation and the cell itself. The studies were done on rats and mice, and most of the studies reviewed exposure levels that are not really realistic replicas of exposure that humans experience from their electronics day to day. Like if a rat tried to drink 100 gallons of water in 24 hours and died from it, and then someone published a research paper saying water proven to kill people, you would look at it twice and realize that nobody, rat or human, would ever drink 100 gallons of water in a day. So while, sure, water could theoretically harm you in certain circumstances, the study does not prove that realistic amounts of water consumed the way humans consume it will do the same thing. Just saying. Anyway, I'm not saying this guy is like a total quack, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of the studies he references are legit and like draw conclusions that he then extrapolates to create content. I am saying he's exaggerating results and sometimes slightly misinterpreting conclusions and drawing conclusions that don't always exist from these studies to make fear-mongering claims that create a perception that you can trust him because he's citing a legit source in order to make you trust him so that you buy his products, right? Because he's selling something. So that's all I just wanted to say. Like, he's not, I'm not going to like come out here and slander him. I'm just saying he has a goal in mind, and I, watching that video, would just take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, I read that study and a lot of other studies too, and I stayed up way past my bedtime to bring you this episode. So now that I have mansplained how legitimate sources can still be used to fearmonger as a mechanism to create trust in a single person as a hero or worship figure so that they can sell more of their products to you, I will tell you more about the radiation that comes from our devices and whether it's actually something that you need to worry about. Electromagnetic radiation, sometimes referred to as EMF or EMR, refers to the transmission of energy through oscillating electric and magnetic fields at the speed of light. There are both natural and man-made sources of electromagnetic radiation, and the good news is when I say them, you'll recognize most of them. So some natural sources of electromagnetic radiation include the sun, the earth, atoms, right? Now, some man-made sources include radios, cell phones, all kinds of phones really, computers, TVs, microwaves, hair dryers, toasters, power lines, x-ray machines, and many, many, many more. Electromagnetic energy can be described or quantified in 3 different ways, and that's frequency, wavelength, or energy. For example, radio and microwaves are usually described in frequency, the unit of frequency being hertz. Visible light and infrared light are usually described in wavelengths, the unit of wavelength being meters, and X-rays and gamma rays are usually described in energy, the unit of energy being electron volts. Now, there is such thing as a mechanical wave, which would be, for example, waves in water. And mechanical waves are characterized by a disturbance in matter. And the matter in question, when you're talking about waves of water, is water, right? You're moving the water, and the water is disturbed, and it results in waves. One of the major differences between mechanical waves and electromagnetic waves is that electromagnetic waves don't need a solid medium like water to move about. They can travel through air and solid materials, but they can also exist in a vacuum, meaning electromagnetic waves penetrate literally everything, space and time. We'll be right back. The CDC very conveniently has a super clear chart that maps out the electromagnetic spectrum from the lowest energy forms to the highest energy forms. And the lower energy ones, as you can probably assume, but I just want to be hyper clear about this so that we're like really visualizing what's going on so we can understand it. The lower energy electromagnetic forms are safer for humans. And the higher up we go on the energy spectrum, the less safe these energy forms are for human exposure. Now, I'm going to read you the electromagnetic spectrum from safest to least safe. And if you want, you can actually check out the full chart in a visual format in the show notes. I've linked the CDC article that shows it. It's very intuitive and easy to understand. It literally goes green, yellow, orange, red to indicate safety. But I'm just going to read it to you for anyone who's like working out or grocery shopping or like can't look at the chart so that you can understand where everything falls on the electromagnetic spectrum. So on the completely lowest energy, safest end of the spectrum, the green end of the spectrum is radio waves. These are the safest electromagnetic frequencies for human exposure. One thing to note here is that the safer and lower energy an electromagnetic frequency is, the longer the actual wave length will be. So radio waves are legit huge. The size of a single radio wave ranges from the length of a football field to literally longer than the diameter of our planet Earth, which means that radio waves are actually on the safest end of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I know I'm like beating you over the head with that, but I just want to again, I just want to be clear so we're understanding everything. And I needed to say it a million times to really understand this. Some examples of how you might be exposed to radio waves include broadcast radio, lower even than anything else is AM radio, and then it's like FM radio. Other things are like your TV, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell phone. I just think that's super interesting. Now, after radio waves on the electromagnetic spectrum, we arrive at microwaves. I was super interested to find that the wavelength of a microwave is so much smaller, about the size of a baseball, like not a field, a baseball, according to NASA. But shockingly, that is not a short enough wavelength to make them dangerous for humans. The shortest wavelengths are legitimately a fraction of the length of a single atom. So we're not even close to the dangerous end of the spectrum yet, as science stands. And I just wanted to point that out because that's crazy. Anyway, you might experience microwaves in the form of your microwave oven, for example, or even a regular oven. And I will say that sometimes Wi-Fi, TV, and cell phones can sort of melt into this category because as we're creating and inventing and advancing those forms of technology into higher powered, smarter, more advanced technology, they sometimes are in the microwave end of the spectrum as opposed to the radio wave end of the spectrum. But still, we are really distinctly in the green area of the electromagnetic spectrum so far. After microwaves, we get into infrared waves, which are roughly as long, and this is like where we start to, this is crazy, roughly as long as the width or diameter, not the length, but the width across of a single human hair. Now you might be thinking like, okay, that is the smallest. We're in the danger zone. No, it gets way, 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 way smaller. Things that expose humans to infrared waves, your remote control that controls the television, a radiator in your apartment, like in New York City, like everyone has exposed radiators that provide you heat, like that. Thermal imaging, where you point a camera at someone and it shows like a heat map of their body where like their skin and their core area sort of might be red, but then their hair is like blue because their hair is not like blood is not coursing through their hair, right? Do you know what I mean? And it's more like red at their like toward their heart center. But then as you get to extremities like fingers, it might be like orange or yellow because your heat is centered in your core. I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm doing a bad job of explaining it. So far, all of these wavelengths on the electromagnetic spectrum are not visible to the human eye. You cannot see radio waves or microwaves with the naked eye. You cannot see infrared waves. But infrared, you start to know that you're getting toward the middle of the spectrum because even though you can't see infrared waves, you can feel them in the form of heat. Hence, the radiators and the thermal imaging. What's interesting here is that the literal human body is technically in the infrared category because, like I said about thermal imaging, our bodies radiate heat. So obviously, when I found that out, or like when I put those puzzle pieces together, my immediate next question was, wait a sec, like, does that mean that our literal bodies emit more radiation than cell phones? And that was a bit of a rabbit hole and like very hard to kind of Google. You know what I mean? It's very hard to search that and have the internet interpret it correctly. But basically, it seems like, yeah, technically we contain more energy in our bodies than our cell phone does. But the difference is the phones are way smaller. So the frequency of radiation is like a lot stronger and more localized coming out of a cell phone than the frequency at which we radiate heat, which is like dispersed all over the surface area of our bodies. So that's just like a sort of little fun fact. Now, as you know, these wavelengths are getting shorter on the electromagnetic spectrum, and therefore they're becoming less overall safe for humans, which is interesting because next on the spectrum is visible light. And this is literally just light, any light that you can see with your eyeballs. The length of this wave is, per NASA's website, the width of a soap bubble membrane. So like say you blow a bubble, right, with soap and it's got that kind of like iridescent reflection on it. The actual part of it, like the outside that you touch to pop it, like the skin of the bubble, the width of that, not the width of the whole bubble, just the width of the membrane. So like invisible almost. Examples of visible light like are pretty self-explanatory, but it would be like sunlight, screens, light bulbs and LEDs, bioluminescence, like when there is literal glowing algae in the ocean, aurora borealis, the northern lights, like any type of light that you can see with your eyeballs is considered visible light. Now we get to UV. And UV radiation is where we start to see some actual danger when humans are exposed to it. And that's because partway through the UV radiation section of the electromagnetic spectrum, this radiation becomes what we call ionizing radiation. So up until now, all the forms of radiation that we've mentioned, radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible light, these forms of radiation are non-ionizing radiation. And that means they are not able to strip an electron from an atom or molecule, including living tissue. In other words, most researchers agree that non-ionizing radiation does not mutate or otherwise damage your DNA. The biggest way non-ionizing radiation is understood to even be able to hurt humans is through heat, by burning you, for example, like all heat injuries being equal. Ionizing radiation, on the other hand, is very clearly capable of actually mutating and damaging DNA on the cellular molecular level, causing health problems, including cancer. And this isn't that surprising, right? Because if you actually think about it big picture and logically, like UV radiation is where the radiation starts to become ionizing and have the potential to damage and mutate DNA. We know that because too much UV exposure causes cell mutations and deaths, otherwise known as, say it with me, skin cancer, melanoma, etc. We know that. And if we don't know that, go back to my episode called Is Sunscreen Bad for You? Because like everyone for a minute was like, sunscreen causes cancer. No, you know what causes cancer? Laying out in the sun without sunscreen. Right. Okay. Anyway, you already know this, but ways that you can be exposed to UV radiation include the sun, tanning beds, that kind of stuff. Now, the size of a UV wavelength is the diameter of the rhinovirus, which is literally the virus, like the singular cell virus that causes the common cold. Something that I found on the internet that is interesting is a virus is 10 to 100 times smaller than a singular bacterium, a single germ. To put this in perspective, the UV wavelength is about 25 nanometers long, and there are 10 million nanometers in a centimeter. That is how small UV wavelengths are. And if you didn't think that anything like up until now was really serious, after UV radiation, we get really serious because that's when we get into X-rays, which I don't think I need to explain how we get exposed to those. And X-ray wavelengths are the size of a single atom. Then after X-rays, we get into gamma rays. And gamma rays are the most dangerous type of radiation known in human science. And the length of this wavelength is the size of a single nucleus of a single cell. Like, this is crazy, so tiny. Gamma rays are naturally generated in like the area surrounding a black hole in outer space. So like if you want to know like the level of dangerous, or alternately during the explosion of a supernova. Like, we don't want to be present for those things, you know? But on Earth, gamma rays are also generated by the following. And now I'm going to list a couple of things that radiate gamma radiation. That was a stupid way to say that, but you know what I mean? Lightning, like lightning. Radioactive decay, which is the decay of elements like uranium and potassium, which drives the internal heat and temperature of the planet, leading to things like volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. #bad. Now, this radioactive decay is called radon, and it is unfortunately the largest source of natural background radiation for most humans, like just the amount of radiation that we are naturally exposed to by being alive on the planet. Levels of radon, interestingly, are usually higher inside of buildings and homes, especially on lower levels and in basements where you're closer to the ground. There are regulations in the world to create like radon-resistant practices, techniques, materials, that kind of stuff. Radon levels vary a lot depending on where you live. And unfortunately, a lot of the northern part of the U.S. is actually a zone 1 risk for radon levels, with the southeast part of the United States being zone 3, which is the lowest level, and a lot of the southwest being zone 2, so like kind of in the middle. So I did link a heat map from the Environmental Protection Agency so you can see where your home state and city fall in terms of zoning. But for context, radon is actually pretty serious, and I'm starting to feel like it's something we don't talk about enough, because not only is it the largest source of background radiation in humans, but it's also the number 1 leading cause of lung cancer in people who don't smoke cigarettes. And it's the number 2 leading cause of lung cancer overall, right after smoking. So that's pretty messed up. This is why coal miners get cancer so often, because they're exposed to these like decaying elements all the time underground. So anyway, I just think like as a society, we should be talking about radon exposure more. Another source of gamma radiation includes cancer treatment. Not the chemo, but they literally call it radiation. Like when my mom was sick, they say like chemo and radiation. It oftentimes goes hand in hand because they are like 2 of the most aggressive forms of treatment for cancer. And radiation kills cancer cells, but it also sometimes has the unfortunate side effect, and unfortunate is the understatement of the fucking century, of making you incredibly sick in other ways, or literally sometimes giving you a second cancer. Some of the side effects of radiation therapy, besides literally giving you other cancer, include hair loss, nausea, vomiting, memory loss, fatigue, cough, shortness of breath, mouth problems, open sores, inactive thyroid gland, trouble swallowing, taste changes, sexual and fertility problems, bladder problems, digestive problems. Like, it basically wreaks total havoc on your entire body and all your systems. CT and PET scans can also expose you to X-rays and gamma rays. So people who work with X-ray machines, CT and PET scan machines, they might have high exposure sometimes. It's why we wear those like huge heavy vests in there to like try and protect your body from the radiation. Other things that can expose you to gamma rays: nuclear weapons and testing, nuclear power plants, like I said, coal mines, and also tobacco for people who smoke can carry radiation. Though it's not really clear to me where exactly on the spectrum tobacco falls, but it does have radiation. Anyway, that's the electromagnetic spectrum. And as you can see from the wide range from safer types to non-safer types of radiation, our phones and microwave ovens are on the pretty low end of things overall, and regulatory bodies around the world have ensured that there are maximum levels of radiation emission allowed out of these devices, which like is literally a fraction of the safe exposure level, and that is designed to protect us from radiation sickness from exposure to these devices. So now I want to kind of categorize the concerns people have about this electromagnetic radiation, because there are definitely a few main concerns that people always bring up. And they are these devices giving me cancer? Are these devices affecting my fertility? And hey, I have electromagnetic sensitivity disorder. So let's go in order of what I just said. We're going to start with, do our phones, microwaves, Wi-Fi routers, wireless headphones cause cancer? 99% of medical websites you find will tell you that AirPods are not cancer causing and it's not worth worrying about. Same with most doctors. Dr. Matt McDougall went on Huberman Lab last year and said Bluetooth headphones, he wears them all the time. They are not to be worried about for any radiation-related reasons, for any heat-related reasons. Like, these are fine to wear. So the consensus among most people is all of your electronic devices are fine. But what's kind of weird is that then I looked it up in the WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer classifier, where it tells you what group carcinogen something is. For example, like we always say, alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen. In other words, it is a substance that is known to give humans cancer. And radio waves, which is like where a lot of our like cell technology, our phone technology, like that kind of stuff is classified. Radio waves are classified as group 2B, which is called possibly carcinogenic to humans due to increased risk of glioma, which is a type of malignant brain cancer, which they discovered in heavy cell phone users who held their phones directly to their ears, like touching their ears, for an average of 30 minutes every single day over a time period of 10 years. Now, I do want to say, like, yes, we use our phones a lot, sure, but I think that is a lot more direct exposure to cell phones than most of us. Like, I don't touch my cell phone to my ear for 30 minutes a day, every day for 10 years, or in anything like reasonably representing that quantity. Now, this does a little bit throw what I've just learned about the electromagnetic spectrum and safety levels into question. Like, cell phones and Bluetooth headphones emit less radiation than LED light bulbs, supposedly, according to this electromagnetic spectrum. And most doctors and medical professionals and medical journals agree they're not a cancer risk. But then they're like, actually, JK, who knows, because of all these like brain cancers. So obviously, I looked at the research, and there's kind of so much research that we need a bunch of meta-analyses to really interpret the data at a larger scale. So I did look at a pretty big meta-analysis, and I thought that might be the most comprehensive way to go. It just means, like I said, a bunch of scientists and researchers reviewed a bunch of results from previous studies to examine correlation and draw larger conclusions to point toward a hypothesis about what's actually going on. And unfortunately, the result of this meta-analysis is like a lot of these studies that suggest that our devices are causing cancer are basically insufficient evidence. Like, every study focused on different ages and genders and lifestyles within the test subjects. People self-reported their cell phone use. So, like, not only is it probably not accurate, like, they probably used the devices way more than they self-reported. It's like when you ask people to self-report how much they drink, they always say, like, "Oh, I drink probably, like, 3 beverages a week," and then you find out they actually drink, like, 7 to 10 beverages a week, you know what I mean? So it's unlikely that the self-reported cell phone use and device use is actually accurate, and it's probably way lower than what they were actually doing that was, like, correlated to these brain tumors. Different studies recorded how the phone was used in all different ways, like not just directly touching your ear in a phone call. And honestly, a lot of these studies are even a bit outdated. Plus, then we're talking about like animal testing, lab testing, all that. Now, I do want to be clear that the classifications themselves, like a group 1 carcinogen versus a group 2B carcinogen, for example, that doesn't mean that a group 1 carcinogen has more risk of causing you cancer. It just means that there is more conclusive evidence showing us that that thing does cause cancer. So it's not like alcohol causes more cancer because it's a group 1 carcinogen than your cell phone because that's a group 2B carcinogen. It just means there's more evidence to support that alcohol causes cancer than there is evidence to support that a cell phone causes cancer. We'll be right back. By way of, like, creating understanding and context for you to, like, show you where 2B actually is on the spectrum, some other things that are classified as 2B carcinogens include aspartame. That's the sweetener used in Diet Coke. Melamine. Melamine is found in a ton of, like, plastic dinnerware, like dishes, cups, that kind of stuff, and also, like, lamination on wood panels. So, like, wood floors that are laminated, wooden countertops and walls that are laminated. Some other things, kava, which a lot of people are drinking or doing like drops of as a relaxing alternative to alcohol. I do not recommend. We might be doing an episode on this. People are getting legit addicted to this stuff. So that's crazy. But also, like, dry cleaning is classified as 2B. Like, if you work at a dry cleaner, like, your occupational exposure to dry cleaning is a group 2B carcinogen. The exhaust from your car engine, gasoline, and then literally on this list is traditional pickled Asian vegetables. Like, girl, what? So, like, that's all really weird and, like, all on different ends of the spectrum to me, and, like, I feel like it doesn't help at all. So in terms of your risk of cancer, it seems like currently most people and most professionals who have studied this their whole lives and worked even in nonprofit regulatory institutions that have no end goal in mind except for to discover the truth for human welfare, most of these people are not worried that these devices, these wireless items give you cancer. They're not worried about that. And there are, like I said, tons of regulatory bodies around the world where it's their entire job to make sure the level of radiation emitted from your devices is a bajillionth of what it would take to harm you. And you're pretty much like advised to not listen to the quacks who like worry about this all the time on TikTok and make like extreme claims to like suck you in and then like feed you this narrative that makes you trust them so you buy their shit. The research that is currently available might show some signs in raw cells or in animals, but there is not enough conclusive evidence that has been repeated and duplicated to worry. Like I said, also the studies haven't focused on realistic exposure levels. The results have not been replicated in controlled trials. These are all things that scientific evidence actually requires, and none of the published research on this, like, it's all hypothesizing, it's all like one-off results and correlation, not repeated, duplicated, proven causation. That said, as with everything, I do recommend that we keep an eye on this as more research comes out because, truth be told, most discoveries begin with one or two people noticing something. You know what I mean? So I'm not a quack. I'm not saying ditch your AirPods, but I am saying let's just monitor the situation because we are informed girly pops. For now, there's no conclusive or even convincing body of evidence that this level and type of radiation is harmful at normal levels of exposure in humans. Okay, so next concern, are these things affecting your fertility and your reproductive systems? Same exact thing. Limited evidence in cells, in dishes, in labs, and also in animals. Some minor testing in very diverse circumstances in humans with extremely mixed results. A lot of the studies where electromagnetic radiation had literally no impact, and then some where the impact was small, but the mechanism by which fertility was affected at all could have been a variety of different causations. Like, it's not necessarily because of the radiation, so, like, we don't actually know. Like, it could be heat, it's probably not cell mutation, it might be related to mitochondria activity, like, we're just not sure. Also, as like a tale as old as time, in pretty much none of this research were women even considered. Like, women were just not even mentioned. It's sperm, it's testes, it's male animals. Classic. So the same thing for fertility as cancer. Don't worry yet. Let's just keep an eye on it because information is power. Now, here's a cringe one that I mentioned earlier, but we're going to like double click on right now is electromagnetic sensitivity, sometimes called electrohypersensitivity disorder. The reason this is cringe is because it literally does not exist. The people who claim they have this, listen, I'm sorry, that was kind of mean. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that like it's a psychosomatic thing. And the people who claim they have this disorder exhibit symptoms like headaches, tinnitus or tinnitus. It's, I think, really pronounced tinnitus, but it looks like tinnitus, so most people call it tinnitus. It's like that ringing in your ears. Fatigue, poor sleep quality, memory and concentration issues, anxiety, mood disorders. Literally all of these are symptoms of just having way too much screen time. I think it's kind of embarrassing that we're trying to make this like a whole medical thing, like we have a disease instead of just like owning that we're completely reliant on our phones for information, communication, companionship, brain rot. Like, let's just work on ourselves. Let's not play a blame game and be like, it's radio waves making me sick. Like, girl, just touch some grass, go outside, breathe some fresh air. It's kind of giving eye roll. There is no scientific evidence that this condition is real, though obviously there is evidence that the symptoms are real. They're just attributed to what I already said, too much screen time. And when they did do research and data collection to try and show that this disorder is real, they literally can't because there is no rhyme, reason, or pattern to who exhibits symptoms, how and when they exhibit symptoms, or even if they actually exhibit symptoms. They did some randomized blind trials with people who claimed that they could like feel when an electromagnetic device was radiating nearby, and they literally couldn't. Like, say there's like a screen in between me and the subject, and I turn on a cell phone and I say, "Can you feel the electromagnetic field right now?" They might be like, "Yeah." And you're like, "Okay." So they do know the phone is on. And then you turn it off, or you say you're going to turn it off and you don't turn it off and you're like, "How about now?" And they're like, "No, you turned it off." But you didn't. Like, they could not actually assess whether this device was radiating or not radiating at all. Like, I think we need to drink some milk. Anyway, if you experience any of those symptoms from overusing your screens, please allow me to direct your attention to episode number 5. It's called of Caps Lock, if that wasn't clear. It's called Doom Scrolling is Killing You, How to Reduce Your Screen Time. It is absolutely spectacular. If I do say so myself, I think it's some of my best work. It is our third most popular episode to date, and it tells you not only how our screens are literally shortening human lifespans for reasons other than radiation, but also how to fix it. In the meantime, if you want to be extra cautious about any of the concerns I mentioned today, here are some quick things that you can do while you're wearing your tinfoil hat, which, hey, I respect it. More power to you. I'm here to bring you the information, not to judge what you do with it. Maybe I'll roll my eyes a little bit, but I'm going to let you have it. You can reduce your screen time. I would say get rid of your microwave, but now I feel like influencers are like kind of dumb and embarrassing for doing that because literally your oven does the same thing. Though it seems that generally speaking, like air fryers and convection ovens have slightly less radiation than regular ovens and microwaves, but like marginally. So I don't know about that one. Switch up the ear you hold your phone to. I don't think I've ever taken a phone call on the left side of my head. I always pick up the phone on the right side of my head. If you're feeling extra cautious, pick it up with your left hand instead sometimes. You can swap your wireless headphones for corded ones if you want. Don't work with your laptop resting on your legs. Sit further away from your phone, like put it on the other side of the desk or the table. Don't sleep with your phone directly on your nightstand next to your head. Don't carry your phone around constantly or leave it in a pocket. Aim for putting it in your bag or like, again, further away from you on the top of your desk. Do not try to call or text when you have no cell service. I guess radiation emissions pick up slightly when they have to work harder to make a connection. Again, like these are going to make like the most tiny marginal differences. If you want to do those things, you have my blessing, but they're not going to make like necessarily a significant difference in your experience of radiation emissions from your devices. And that's all I have for you today. Bottom line, don't worry, don't stress right now. When it comes to your electronic devices, the psychological stress that they give you is way more impactful than radiation exposure. Let's just keep an eye on the developments and see what the science continues to say, because we are informed, smart girly pops who want the best for ourselves and the best for our loved ones. Thank you for listening. Thank you for nerding out with me. And next week, I'm going to bring you something a little bit softer because that was a ton of science for one wellness girly pop. So that is the tea on that. And if you're listening to me on your wireless headphones, don't fret, queen. Okay. Love you guys. Talk soon.